have the chassis pulled out, ready to go. Before we do the recap, all these canned parts here will be replaced because they're probably worn out. We know at least this one here is leaky and it overheats. Just wanted to show something interesting about this particular chassis. We have the tuner up here, and there's only position for 10 channels here. And what they did was, there is a coil set. We'll pull it out and see how close we can get to show you. You can see the zoom in. You can see the coil set. Here's your actual fine-tuning adjustment, the screw. When you have the proper channel in position, it puts the adjustment in front of a hole here. So there are contacts here, and there's a coil set. Okay. Now this one says this one is for channel 5. So this is tuned for channel 5. So we'll zoom it back out, and we'll put the coil set back in. Okay, slip in. The adjustment screw is right here for the fine tuning, and another coil set. One of these is for the oscillator, and one of these is for the actual tuning. So same thing here. We have a coil set. We have a coil and a couple capacitors. Again, this one says it's for channel 5. So apparently they had a set for each of the VHF channels, and they loaded whichever ones were in the area of the person who was buying the set. Rather interesting. So I get a picture of the high voltage section. Fortunately, there's not too much wrong here that I know about. I just added an extra high voltage lead on here so I can pull the chassis out and still run the set. The yoke connection here. We have the horizontal output, and the back. Instead of most older sets having a damper rectifier, this set has a dual triode. Unfortunately, that's not the way it's marked in the schematic, so unfortunately it's not a problem here. High voltage transformer and high voltage rectifier. Another interesting feature with this set is, let's see if we can, this is a little makeshift thing I did to attach an antenna, or actually now a digital converter. But the antenna connection, they have a separate connection for the high and low VHF. They intended that you actually have a separate antenna for each, as opposed to nowadays sets having a separate VHF UHF. Okay, the bottom side of the chassis, and again, unfortunately, all of these tan cylindrical objects here are capacitors, and they will have to be replaced, or should be, because they're ticking time bombs waiting to happen. Now the cans, capacitors you saw on top, the connections are actually down here. So what I'm going to do is leave the cans there and just make a disconnect the capacitors down here, and then install a capacitor of this style inside. There's plenty of room in here. Now here's another little addition. They put an extra capacitor here. It's obviously been added in as an afterthought. Now the schematic says it's for sets were designed to run on 50 cycle power, and this one never, I don't think it ever did. So I don't think I need to replace, I don't need to put another one in its place. It's just put in parallel across this capacitor here. So we'll try and see what happens with just replacing the one. Now I'm going to zoom in a bit. Back in 1946, they came out with the first solid state diode, and this set actually has one right here, a 1N34. Now behind these two capacitors here, you can see a hole. Well, you probably can't see the hole, but behind those two is a chassis hole where a tube used to be. Now in the original version of the set they had this, and apparently I must have a later version because they decided to pull that out and put this diode in its place. So this is actually a solid state set in 1948. And this is the first section we'll be working on, again replacing the three main filters here, or 4 main filters. Again, this guy here is just sitting in parallel with this, and we'll just show you, how much smaller parts have gotten. This is a 30 microfarad 475 volt capacitor, and here is the modern day equivalent 30 microfarad 500 volt. So see, there's no real problem with getting this thing in here. As a matter of fact, the connection to this capacitor comes up to here. Okay, so let's zoom out a little bit here. Comes up to here to one of the rectifiers. So I can essentially just put the capacitor right in there and she'll fit fine. I'll use the CAN connections here as a tie point, but we'll take this connection off so it'll be isolated. It'll break the contact off. You see, when I want to go replace this cap here, okay, everything is grounded, so all I really need to do is follow where the wire is going. Say this one here, this yellow wire actually comes up to this point here. So I can just look on the terminal strip, either above it or below it. Okay, here's a ground connection here, so I could just stick the cap there without too much trouble. And it'll actually be where the power is being used, so it's actually a better place to put it. So, as a matter of fact, the cap that goes here is much smaller. It's only a 50 volt cap, so it won't even look this big. It'll be very, very small.